She fought every man who tried to claim her, but the rancher won her without a fight. The sun was just beginning to rise over the dry plains when she arrived in the small, dusty town. Her boots crunched over the gravel road as she walked slowly, carrying only a small bundle of belongings tied neatly in a cloth. She looked around, her eyes scanning the quiet streets, the few shops that had opened for the day, and the scattered wooden houses. This town was far from the places she had known before, far from the crowded streets, the shouting men, and the endless challenges she had faced. She had heard of this place from travelers along the trail, a place where a person could work honestly, earn respect, and perhaps find a little peace. She had learned long ago that trust was a rare treasure. In the years before, she had been approached by countless men who had wanted to claim her, to tell her how to live, or to try to impress her with gifts and promises. Every one of them had met her refusal. She had fought, argued, and sometimes even run, but she never let anyone take control of her life. The experience had made her wary of strangers, careful of every smile and every gesture. She knew the world could be harsh, but she also knew she would never let it shape her in ways she did not choose. As she walked toward the center of the town, she noticed the stairs. A few men stopped in their tracks, looking at her with curiosity, whispering to one another. Some women eyed her carefully, perhaps with a mix of admiration and caution. She had seen this before. Her presence alone often caused a stir. But she moved with purpose, her head held high, her back straight, showing no fear. She did not ignore them entirely, but she did not allow herself to be distracted either. Her focus was clear: find work, find shelter, and find a place where she could exist without constant interference. The town was small, the kind where everyone knew everyone else's business. She passed a general store with a wooden sign swaying in the gentle morning breeze. The storekeeper gave her a nod but said nothing. Returning to his sweeping further down the street, a blacksmith hammered away at his anvil, sparks flying with every strike. The rhythmic sound echoed across the street, a familiar comfort to someone who had traveled many miles and faced countless hardships. She remembered her father teaching her the value of hard work, of honest labor, and she felt a sense of familiarity in watching people build their lives with their own hands. At the edge of town, she finally saw it. A ranch. It was modest, surrounded by a sturdy fence, with a few horses grazing quietly in the yard. Smoke rose from a chimney, and she imagined warmth inside, food cooking, and a quiet, steady life. Something drew her there, a feeling that perhaps this could be a place to rest, to catch her breath from years of running, and to finally plant roots, even if temporary. She approached the gate cautiously, aware that she would be judged by those she met, but determined not to let their opinions sway her. Inside the ranch, the rancher was already at work, tending to a horse that had a minor injury on its leg. He was a man of few words, and his presence was calm, steady, and unassuming. His hands were rough, evidence of years of labor, but there was gentleness in the way he handled the animal. He looked up as she entered the yard, his eyes steady on hers. He did not speak immediately, but there was no suspicion or judgment in his gaze, only a quiet acknowledgement of another person, someone new, someone cautious but not hostile. She introduced herself simply, explaining that she was looking for work and a place to stay for a while. Her voice was soft but firm, carrying the confidence of someone who had survived many challenges. The rancher nodded thoughtfully. He did not offer grand promises or speeches. Instead, he invited her to help with the morning chores. The work was demanding but honest. She felt satisfaction in lifting hay bales, feeding the animals, and learning the rhythm of ranch life. Each task grounded her, reminded her that she was capable, independent, and strong. As the day went on, she noticed the rancher watching her, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but with quiet respect. He did not try to impress her, nor did he offer unsolicited advice. He merely observed, stepping in only when necessary. There was something different about him. He was steady where others were loud. He was calm where others were impatient. She began to feel a sense of safety, the kind that comes not from control or domination, but from reliability and integrity. For the first time in a long while, she could imagine being around someone without needing to fight, to defend herself constantly, to prove her worth. By evening, the ranch had a soft glow as the sun began to set. The animals were settled, and the chores were done. She sat quietly on the porch, looking out at the wide open plains, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink. The quietness was a balm to her soul. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the challenges, the fights, the men who had tried to claim her, and realized that she had survived each one because she had never compromised her values. And now, here in this quiet town, on this simple ranch, she felt the first hint of peace she had known in years. The rancher came to sit beside her, offering a simple nod, a gesture that said more than words could. There was understanding in that silence. She realized that here she would not have to fight to exist. And for someone who had always been ready to defend herself, that realization felt like a gift she had almost forgotten existed. That night, as she lay in the small room offered to her, she thought about what tomorrow might bring. She did not know if the town would accept her, if others would try to challenge her, or if she would need to fight again. But she did know one thing. She had made it this far, and she had a chance now to choose her battles, to find her own path, and perhaps, for the first time, to let someone into her world without fear. Life at the ranch had a steady rhythm, one that was both challenging and comforting. She rose early each morning, waking to the soft light of dawn spilling across the plains. The air was crisp, carrying the smell of hay, earth, and horses. Each day was filled with work, feeding the animals, mending fences, cleaning stalls, and learning the ways of the land. She discovered a strange satisfaction in these tasks. Unlike the chaos of the towns she had passed through before, here the work had a purpose, a natural flow. Every action had meaning, and that gave her a rare sense of peace. Yet, even as she began to settle, she could not escape the whispers that had followed her from place to place. Word of her arrival traveled faster than she expected. Men in town had heard of the woman who had resisted countless suitors, and curiosity, and sometimes envy, drew them toward the ranch. Some came under the pretense of friendship, offering help or advice. Others came boldly, hoping to impress her, to make her yield to their charm. Each encounter tested her patience and her strength, though she faced them all with the same unyielding spirit that had protected her for years. The first of these men arrived on a bright morning. He was tall and confident, with polished boots and a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his face. "I hear you're new in town," he said, his voice smooth. "Thought I'd stop by and introduce myself." She sized him up carefully. His words were polite, but there was an edge of expectation, a sense that he thought he could sway her with charm alone. She smiled faintly, polite but firm, and said, "I'm here to work, not to meet anyone's expectations." The man blinked, a hint of surprise crossing his face. Few had spoken to him this way. Most women had listened politely and nodded, but she refused to play the part he seemed to expect. After a moment, he tipped his hat and left, muttering under his breath, defeated. Not long after, another man appeared, a local rancher who prided himself on his wealth and connections. He arrived with gifts, a basket of fruit, a bottle of fine wine, and a letter of introduction. He spoke at length about the advantages of living in town and the comfort he could provide. She listened patiently, but when he hinted that he expected more than friendship in return, she cut him off. "I do not give my trust or my presence in exchange for gifts," she said calmly. "If you are here to help, then I will accept your help, but nothing else." The man frowned, clearly frustrated that his usual tactics had failed. Once again, she had held her ground without raising her voice or resorting to anger. As the days passed, more men tried to catch her attention in different ways. Some were subtle, offering to teach her skills or promising protection. Others were less subtle, making bold declarations or attempting to corner her in conversation. She dealt with each situation carefully, never losing her composure. What made her remarkable was not just her courage, but her ability to remain calm. She did not need to fight physically or shout. Her presence, her confidence, and her unwavering principles created a barrier that no one could cross without her permission. Through all this, the rancher remained a quiet observer. He never interfered, never attempted to take her side unnecessarily. Instead, he allowed her to navigate these encounters in her own way. He saw her strength, her intelligence, and her independence, and he respected her more for it. There was a silent understanding between them. He would be there when she needed support, but he would not try to control her. That understanding, more than anything else, began to create a bond between them. One afternoon, while she was repairing a fence on the outskirts of the property, she noticed a group of men approaching from the road. They had heard of her resilience and came, not with politeness, but with arrogance. They assumed that because she was alone and new, she could be intimidated. But she stood her ground, holding her tools firmly and meeting their gaze without fear. They tried to tease her, to challenge her wit and patience, but she responded with calm confidence. Each word she spoke, each motion she made, demonstrated her independence. The rancher came out to the field quietly, his presence steadying. He did not speak at first, but the men noticed him. There was a calm authority in the way he moved, the quiet confidence in his stance. The men realized quickly that he was not going to fight them, not with anger or aggression, but his mere presence made it clear that he would protect the woman's choices without undermining her. Slowly they backed away, muttering excuses and retreating. The encounter ended without a confrontation, and she felt a quiet sense of relief. Not because she had needed him to intervene, but because she could sense that he would never try to control her. Evenings at the ranch offered a different kind of challenge, more subtle, more personal. She found herself thinking about the rancher, about the ease with which he moved through the day, the quiet kindness in his gestures, the patience he showed. Unlike the other men, he did not seek to impress her, nor did he challenge her. He offered respect, support, and stability. She realized that these were rare qualities in the world she had known, and the thought unsettled her. She was not used to feeling safe without vigilance, and yet with him, she could feel that safety. Their conversations were simple at first. He would ask about her day, about the chores she had completed, or about her thoughts on the land and animals. She found herself opening up slowly, sharing small details of her past, her experiences, and her dreams. Each word she spoke, each story she told, strengthened the silent bond growing between them. She noticed how he listened, not waiting for her to stop so he could speak, but truly listening, absorbing what she said with care. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, she shared a story about a distant town where she had once lived. She spoke of the difficulties she had faced, the men who had tried to control her, and the lessons she had learned about strength and independence. The rancher nodded quietly, offering no judgment, only understanding. For the first time in a long while, she felt that someone could hear her without trying to change her or challenge her choices. That simple acknowledgement brought a warmth she had not expected to feel so soon. The days turned into weeks, and the pattern continued. Suitors came and left, each failing to sway her, each learning that her determination was unshakable. Yet the rancher remained a constant presence, not a suitor, not a challenger, but a companion in the quiet rhythm of daily life. She began to understand that strength could coexist with kindness, that independence did not require isolation. She also began to see the small ways in which he cared, not through grand gestures, but through observation and action. He remembered details she had mentioned in passing, anticipated her needs without being asked, and provided guidance only when necessary. There was no pressure, no expectation, no attempt to claim her. And in that absence of force, she began to feel a connection that was deeper than anything she had encountered before. One evening after a long day of work, she sat on the porch, watching the sky darken and the stars appear. The rancher joined her quietly, bringing a cup of tea. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the ranch, the soft rustle of the wind, the distant calls of animals settling in for the night. She felt a sense of contentment, a rare and precious calm. For all the men who had tried to claim her, for all the struggles and fights, she realized that this quiet companionship was more powerful than any confrontation. In that moment, she understood something important. Strength was not only in resistance, in fighting off those who tried to control her. Strength was also in recognizing who deserved her trust, in allowing herself to connect with someone who respected her fully, and the rancher had earned that recognition, not by force, not by conquest, but by simply being steady, kind, and reliable. The night ended without drama, without challenge, and yet it left a lasting impression. She had faced many battles in her life, but she realized that not every battle needed to be fought. Some victories came quietly, through trust, respect, and understanding. And as she lay down to rest, she felt a quiet hope. A hope that perhaps, here on this ranch, she could finally find more than safety and work. Perhaps she could find companionship, understanding, and a bond built on equality and respect. The days grew longer, and the rhythm of ranch life settled into a comforting pattern. She had learned the ways of the land, the proper way to feed the animals, how to mend fences without them falling apart, and even how to calm a frightened horse. Each task gave her a quiet sense of pride. She realized that this life, though challenging, had a certain honesty she had not experienced before. Here, every action had a purpose, every choice mattered, and she felt a growing connection to the land itself. The rancher was a constant presence in this new rhythm. He moved through the day with quiet precision, never rushing, never forcing her to do more than she could handle. Yet he was always there, a steady figure who would offer a hand when she needed it, a nod when she did something well, or simply a calm presence when the day grew too long. She had seen many men in her life, most eager to dominate, to impress, or to control. But he was different. He offered no demands, no expectations, only respect. Slowly, she began to notice a change within herself. She could relax around him in a way she had never allowed before. One morning after a storm had passed overnight, the ranch was quiet, and the air smelled of wet earth and fresh grass. She was out in the field checking on the animals when she noticed a young foal struggling to stand. The rancher arrived beside her silently, his hands steady and calm. Together they worked to help the foal, moving slowly and carefully. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for his presence, not because she could not have handled it alone, but because his calmness allowed her to act without panic. The foal steadied, and she smiled, realizing that moments like these were teaching her something more than ranch work. She was learning the value of patience, cooperation, and quiet trust. Later that day, she helped the rancher repair a section of the fence that had been damaged by the storm. They worked side by side, and for the first time, they spoke freely about themselves. He told her about his childhood, about learning the ways of ranch life from his father, and about the quiet satisfaction he found in caring for the land and animals. She listened, intrigued by his simplicity and honesty. In turn, she shared small stories from her past, not the ones that carried pain or regret, but the ones that shaped who she had become. There was no judgment, no pity, only a mutual understanding that grew stronger with each word exchanged. As the weeks passed, the townspeople continued to watch her closely. Some still tried to draw her into their schemes or impress her with gifts and attention. She faced each attempt with the same calm confidence as before, but she no longer felt the need to fight in anger or frustration. The presence of the rancher beside her gave her a quiet strength. Not that he fought her battles for her, but that his support reminded her she could remain herself without compromise. For the first time, she did not feel alone in her struggle. One evening after the chores were done and the sun dipped low over the horizon, the rancher invited her to sit with him by the fire outside the small cabin. The warmth of the flames contrasted with the cool night air, and the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. He handed her a cup of warm tea, a simple gesture that made her heart feel lighter than it had in years. They sat together in silence for a while, listening to the gentle sounds of the ranch, the lowing of the cattle, the rustling of the wind through the trees, and the distant howl of a coyote. It was a quiet peace, a moment unspoiled by the chaos of her past. She realized then that she had started to trust him, not out of necessity, but because he had earned it. Unlike the other men she had encountered, he did not try to claim her attention or force a connection. Instead, he simply allowed her to be herself, and in that freedom she had begun to open her heart in ways she had long thought impossible. For the first time in years, she felt safe, not just physically, but emotionally. The next morning a new challenge arrived, not from men, but from nature itself. A fence had collapsed during the night, and a group of horses had wandered toward the edge of the property. She and the rancher rushed to corral them, working in harmony. She noticed how naturally they coordinated their efforts, how they seemed to understand each other's movements without words. The experience deepened her respect for him, not just as a man, but as a partner in life. He had shown her that connection could exist without dominance, that trust could be built through action rather than force. During the quiet evenings that followed, they often shared stories about their dreams and hopes. He spoke of his desire to maintain the ranch as a place of stability and care, where animals and people could coexist peacefully. She spoke of her longing for a life free from constant struggle and confrontation, a life where she could grow without fear. Each story strengthened the bond between them, creating a foundation built on understanding, patience, and respect. Over time, she began to notice small gestures from him that spoke volumes. He would remember details she mentioned in passing, like her favorite way to drink tea or how she preferred the animals fed. He anticipated needs without being asked, quietly ensuring her comfort and safety. These gestures were subtle, almost invisible to anyone else, but to her, they represented the kind of care she had always sought but never found. She realized that he did not try to control her, nor did he seek to impress her. He simply existed as a steady presence, allowing her to navigate her own life while offering support when needed. One afternoon, a new visitor came to the ranch, a man from town who had heard of her resilience and wanted to challenge her. He attempted to charm her, offering promises and bold words, expecting her to yield as others had. But she met him with calm confidence, her eyes steady and her voice firm. The rancher watched quietly, never intervening, yet his presence alone seemed to influence the encounter. The man soon realized that she would not be intimidated or swayed, and left, frustrated. She felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that her independence remained intact, strengthened by the knowledge that she was not alone. Evenings became a time of reflection and quiet companionship. She and the rancher would sit together, often in silence, watching the sky change color and the stars emerge. These moments were unspoken lessons in trust and connection. She learned that strength was not always in resisting or fighting. It could also be in allowing oneself to connect with someone worthy, someone who respected her autonomy and choices. The rancher had shown her that true partnership was built on mutual respect, patience, and understanding, rather than dominance or control. Gradually, she noticed a shift within herself. She no longer approached each day with the same guarded caution. She could laugh freely, share thoughts without fear, and even relax in his presence. It was a new kind of freedom, one that had eluded her in her travels and past encounters. She realized that she could maintain her independence while also embracing connection, that strength did not mean isolation, and that trust could be earned and cherished. Life on the ranch had grown comfortable, but the quiet rhythm they had built was not without challenges. The town remained curious about the strong-willed woman, and some men could not accept that she would not yield to their advances. Even though she had resisted countless suitors before, they believed that a challenge like her was meant to be conquered. Yet, unlike before, she no longer faced these attempts alone. The rancher's steady presence had become a shield, not one that forced her choices, but one that supported her in making her own decisions. One morning, a group of men arrived at the edge of the ranch, their voices carrying across the fields. They had heard stories of her strength, of how she had faced every man who tried to claim her. Instead of admiration, they brought arrogance and challenge. They believed they could test her, break her, or intimidate her into submission. She met them at the gate, her stance firm, her eyes steady, her voice calm but resolute. "This is my home for now," she said. "I am here to work, not to play games or be challenged." The men laughed, thinking their numbers and bravado would sway her. They stepped closer, testing her patience, teasing her and trying to provoke a reaction. But she remained composed, responding with words that were clear, sharp, and unwavering. She did not shout, she did not strike, she simply stood her ground. The rancher, observing quietly from a distance, made no sudden movements. He did not need to act with force. His calm authority and readiness were enough to create a barrier. Slowly, The men realized they could not intimidate her, and one by one they turned away, muttering their frustration. After the men left, she took a deep breath and looked toward the rancher. He approached, his expression calm but attentive. "They will keep trying," he said softly, almost as if he were reminding her of the world's persistence. "But you have a way of handling them. You do not fight with anger, only with strength and clarity." She smiled faintly, feeling a strange warmth at his words. For the first time, she realized that strength was not always about confrontation. It could also be about steadfastness and the courage to remain true to oneself. Later that day, they worked together on repairing the barn roof that had suffered damage during a recent storm. The work was difficult, requiring balance, careful planning, and trust. As she climbed the ladder, he remained at the base, ready to assist if needed, but never hovering, never imposing. She felt secure, not because he controlled the situation, but because he offered support without taking over. As they worked, they spoke of small things, stories of childhood memories, the challenges of ranch life, and the quiet moments that brought peace. These conversations, simple as they seemed, created a bond deeper than words could capture. The challenges were not only from outsiders. Occasionally, the animals themselves tested her patience. A horse might bolt unexpectedly, a fence might collapse, or a stubborn mule might refuse to cooperate. Each time the rancher offered guidance, not as a teacher who demanded obedience, but as a partner who shared knowledge and helped her problem solve. She realized that true support did not demand submission. It encouraged growth, learning, and confidence. She began to understand that their connection was not built on dominance, but on respect, trust, and shared effort. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple, the rancher suggested a walk across the property. The air was cool, carrying the scent of grass and distant wildflowers. They walked side by side, not speaking much, simply sharing the quiet of the land. Benny stopped and looked at her. "You've faced many challenges in your life," he said quietly. "And yet you continue to stand tall, to trust, and to remain yourself. That is something rare." No one had ever spoken to her this way. Not with recognition, not with respect, and certainly not without expectation. "I've learned to survive," she replied softly. "But I've also learned that I do not need to fight every battle. Some victories come quietly." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. In that moment, she realized that she had begun to value his presence not as protection but as partnership. He had not tried to claim her. He had not tried to impress her, yet he had earned her trust and respect in ways others never could. The following days brought new tests, this time in subtler forms. A man from the town who had once attempted to court her arrived with false compliments and veiled threats, hoping to unsettle her. He assumed she would react with anger or fear, but she remained composed. She spoke clearly, expressing that she had no interest in games and that her life was her own to live. The rancher observed silently, ready to step in only if truly necessary. Again the man left, frustrated, realizing that she could not be controlled or intimidated. These experiences taught her an important lesson. She could face the world without losing herself, and she could allow someone to be close to her without compromising her independence. The rancher's presence made her understand that connection was not about dominance or possession. It was about support, respect, and shared understanding. She began to feel a sense of peace she had never known, a confidence that came not from guarding herself alone, but from choosing to trust someone who deserved it. One afternoon, a fire broke out in a small section of the dry grass near the edge of the ranch. She noticed the smoke and quickly alerted the rancher. Together, they worked to control it, carrying buckets of water and beating down flames with blankets. The danger brought them closer, requiring trust, coordination, and calmness under pressure. Through the experience, she realized that life on the ranch was full of challenges, but facing them together strengthened the bond between them. They did not need to speak to understand each other. They moved in sync, each action reflecting trust, cooperation, and mutual respect. Evenings became times of reflection and quiet conversation. They would sit on the porch sipping tea, watching the stars and sharing thoughts about life, hopes, and dreams. She found herself laughing more freely, sharing stories without fear, and listening with genuine interest. The rancher's calm and steady nature allowed her to open up, revealing parts of herself she had long kept hidden. She began to see that she could remain independent, strong, and true to herself, while also accepting care, companionship, and understanding. The town's curiosity never fully disappeared. Occasionally, men would attempt to provoke a response, hoping to challenge her or test the connection they assumed she had with the rancher. But she had grown confident in her choices. She no longer felt the need to fight in anger or frustration. She could stand firm, knowing that she had allies and that the man beside her respected her entirely. In him, she had found someone who did not seek to claim her, but who had earned her trust through quiet, consistent support. One particularly quiet evening, the rancher asked her to walk with him to the far end of the property where the wildflowers grew. They walked slowly, talking about the small joys of life, the scent of the flowers, the beauty of the sunset, the simple pleasure of a job well done. She realized that these moments were rare in her life, moments of pure peace, without struggle or conflict. She had faced countless battles in her past, but here she could simply exist, appreciated and understood. In these days she began to notice the subtle gestures that spoke more than words ever could. He remembered the smallest details about her preferences, anticipated challenges before they arose, and offered help without demanding gratitude. She realized that love, respect, and trust did not always come in grand gestures. They often came quietly, persistently, and consistently. And in that quiet consistency, she began to feel a connection that was deeper than any challenge or battle she had faced before. The ranch had grown quiet in the early morning, with the soft light of dawn painting the hills in gold and amber. She walked through the fields, feeling the familiar rhythm of the land beneath her boots, the scent of fresh grass and earth filling the air. Life had changed since she had first arrived. What had once been a place of uncertainty and challenge had become a space of comfort, growth, and reflection. She had faced countless trials before, but here she had discovered a different kind of strength, one built on trust, respect, and partnership rather than confrontation or force. Over the weeks, she had watched herself change. She was no longer constantly on guard, no longer bracing for challenges at every turn. The presence of the rancher had taught her that strength did not mean isolation, and that trust could be given without fear. She could laugh freely, speak her mind, and make choices without hesitation. And perhaps more importantly, she had begun to feel something she had not allowed herself to feel in years: hope. The rancher came out of the cabin carrying a small basket of freshly picked fruit. He moved with the quiet efficiency that had become so familiar to her, every gesture measured and calm. When he reached her, he offered her a piece of fruit with a gentle smile. "Good morning," he said simply. "The day looks promising, doesn't it?" She returned his smile, a genuine warmth in her eyes. "It does," she replied.
"And I think we are ready for whatever comes today."
They worked together through the morning, tending to the animals, repairing fences, and preparing the fields for planting. The sun rose higher, warming the earth and casting long shadows across the ranch. The routine was simple, yet it carried a deep sense of satisfaction. Each task reminded her of her capabilities and independence, while also reinforcing the partnership she shared with the rancher. Unlike other men in her past, he did not command or control her. He moved alongside her, supporting her efforts, celebrating her successes, and offering guidance only when necessary. By midday, the town was stirring with activity, as it always did. Occasionally, men would glance toward the ranch, curious about the woman who had resisted them all, yet now appeared calm and content. Some attempted to approach, hoping to provoke a reaction, but she had learned to remain steady. She faced each attempt with confidence, knowing that she no longer needed to fight every battle. The rancher's presence gave her the reassurance that she could remain herself, no matter the intentions of others. And when outsiders tried to impose themselves, their efforts seemed small, insignificant compared to the life she had built on the ranch. As the afternoon wore on, they took a moment to rest in the shade of a large oak tree near the edge of the property. The wind rustled the leaves gently, carrying a faint scent of wildflowers and fresh earth. She leaned back, watching the sunlight dance across the fields, feeling a sense of calm she had never known before. The rancher sat beside her, his gaze focused on the horizon, quiet and steady. They did not need to speak immediately. The silence was comfortable, filled with understanding rather than tension. Finally, she turned to him, her voice soft but clear. "I have faced many challenges in my life," she said, "and I have fought hard to remain myself. But here, with you, I feel something different. I feel safe, not because you protect me from everything, but because you respect me, trust me, and stand beside me without trying to control me." He nodded, his eyes meeting hers with calm reassurance. "That is how it should be," he replied. "Partnership is not about possession. It is about understanding, respect, and choosing to be together because you want to, not because anyone else demands it." Her heart swelled with a quiet joy. She realized that she did not need to fight to prove herself anymore. The victories she had sought through resistance were no longer necessary, because she had found something more meaningful, someone who saw her true strength, respected her independence, and wanted to walk beside her in life, not above her. She understood now that this was what she had been searching for all along. Not a conquest, not a challenge, but a partnership built on equality and trust. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between them deepened. They shared meals, worked the land, and tended to the animals together, each action reinforcing their connection. She noticed the small things, the way he remembered her preferences, anticipated challenges, and celebrated the little successes of the day. These gestures, though simple, spoke louder than words or grand declarations. They showed care, respect, and attention, the foundation of a partnership that would endure. One evening, as the sky turned pink and gold, they took a walk across the fields where wild flowers grew. She bent down to pick one, holding it carefully in her hand, and looked at him. "I never imagined life could be like this," she said softly. "I thought I would always be on guard, always fighting, always alone. But now I feel like I can choose my own path, and I choose this life with you." The rancher smiled, reaching for her hand gently. "I am glad," he said simply, "because I would never ask you to be anything other than yourself. And yet you have chosen to share your life with me, freely, without force, without expectation. That choice is more meaningful than anything else in the world." She felt a warmth spread through her chest, realizing that true connection did not come from struggle or dominance, but from mutual respect and understanding. In the weeks that followed, the town began to notice the change. The woman who had once fought every man who tried to claim her now walked with quiet confidence, smiling freely, and interacting with the townspeople without fear or tension. She had not surrendered her strength, far from it. She had strengthened it, choosing who deserved her trust and allowing herself to connect with someone worthy. And the rancher remained a steady presence, not as a conqueror or challenger, but as a partner, friend, and companion. One morning as they worked together in the barn, she paused and looked at him. "I never realized how rare it is to find someone who respects you so completely," she said. "Most people expect something in return for attention or kindness, but you never asked for anything. You just allowed me to be myself, and that made all the difference." He looked at her with quiet understanding. "That is all anyone should ask for," he replied. "Respect, trust, and honesty. Everything else comes naturally when those are present." It was in these quiet, unremarkable moments that she understood the depth of their bond. There had been no battles fought with fists, no words shouted in anger, no grand gestures of conquest. Instead, their connection had grown slowly, steadily, through patience, trust, and mutual respect. She realized that this was what she had been seeking her entire life, a partner who could walk beside her, not ahead of her, who could support her without controlling her, who could share her victories and challenges without demanding ownership of them. As the seasons changed, their life together became a tapestry of small, meaningful moments. They tended to the ranch, cared for the animals, and watched the sun rise and set over the hills. They laughed together, worked together, and faced minor challenges with calm determination. And through it all, she remained herself, strong, independent, and resilient, but with the added comfort of knowing that someone truly valued her, not for submission or compliance, but for her authentic self. Finally, one evening as the sun dipped low and the sky glowed in brilliant colors, she turned to him with a soft smile. "I fought many battles in my life," she said, "but I realize now that the greatest victory is the one I choose willingly. And I choose this life with you." He took her hand gently, his eyes full of understanding and warmth. "And I am honored," he said, "because you choose me freely, and that choice is more valuable than any victory won by force." In that moment she felt a deep sense of peace, the kind that comes from knowing you have found a true companion. She did not need to fight to prove herself anymore. She had found someone who respected her strength, admired her independence, and wanted to share life with her on equal terms. And in that quiet understanding a new chapter began, one built on trust, love, and partnership, free from the battles of the past. Life on the ranch continued, filled with ordinary days and small joys. Yet for her, every day carried the extraordinary feeling of having found someone who understood her, respected her, and chose to walk beside her. She had faced every man who tried to claim her, and she had won, not through struggle, but by remaining true to herself. And the rancher, steady and patient, had won her heart without a single fight, simply by showing respect, care, and understanding.